sunk, I'm sunken, hiding half aware. Just point the magnet at me, man, let's get some money, we can make it fair. I could be the call to change your life, 'cause you've been on the run since 95. You're nobody's favorite. You're nobody's favorite one. You're nobody's favorite. You're nobody's favorite one. You're nobody's favorite one. Say something cool, say something cool to keep it textual. Well, that's the mood, so what's the move? She's standing next to you. Holy water, holy shot of ginger ale. I've been drinking from wishing wells, hoping it'll change my life. It's not. You're nobody's favorite one. You're nobody's favorite. 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 I had a dream this was all it up, but the luster's fading. I had a dream this was all I want, but the lust is waning. I had a dream this was all You're nobody's favorite one. You're nobody's favorite. You're nobody's favorite one. You're nobody's favorite. You're nobody's favorite one. I've been seeing the world through a dead man's eyes, and when I laid me down, I did not right. But then I noticed that I've been watching myself from a car outside, and so to bring me round, it took me down a long dark ride. That's where I find it at. James Grohl, come and tell me what you know. James Grohl, you're a devil in a daydream. James Grohl, when you're walking for me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. James Grohl, come and tell me what you know. James Grohl, you're a devil in a daydream. James Grohl, will you bring it to me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. You've been selling the world on a dead man's life.
All right, it's not the most professional fade out you have ever heard in your life, but it's what I do. How's everybody doing out there on TV, on Austin Music TV? Thank you, Sheila Steele, and everybody at Austin Music TV. This is, wait for it, so professional. This is 20 Question Tuesdays. I'm Jeff Plankenhorn, and my guest this week is Mobley. Just for those who are uninitiated, 20 Question Tuesdays started a while back, early on in the pandemic, and I was locked up here on Vancouver Island, away from all of my friends and family and fans in Texas. And I got online and I started doing a workshop, and all sorts of people from all over started asking questions, and I thought it was the coolest thing. Then when Sheila asked me to put it on Austin Music TV, I got this cool Restream app, and I started, streaming to multiple platforms. And immediately I saw that I could invite guests, which is way more interesting and way cooler. And usually what we do is we, take some tips to help out local musicians and kind of help them get through. But what we're going to do today that's different is we're going to give all our tips today to dawaheals.org, which is, I've been looking into this a little bit. It's really, really, really great organization. First of all, Dawa means medicine in Swahili, which is super, super cool. Safety net for people of color who are experiencing short-term life crisis, more specifically people of color who are musicians, artists, social workers, teachers, healing practitioners, and service industry workers. Righteous cause and a good thing. You can either donate directly to dawaheals.org, or you can do what you usually do and send it to me, and I will send it in your name, or in the name of the show. And thank you in advance for that. We'll mention that again a little bit later. I always forget, I'm not doing my normal show this evening, my From Here to There, because I'm going to do an envoy for humanity and try and help that vote that's going on in Georgia. So please check online for information on that. We're going to do some postcards. We're going to try and register some voters and things like that. And also the Gospel Turkey is happening this week, the 8th annual Gospel Turkey, where the Purgatory Players who play gospel music of all different types are going to raise money and awareness for the Central Texas Food Bank. And it's our 8th annual, if you can believe that. We're going to have guests from Kevin Russell of Shiny Ribs to Kate Howard to Rich Brotherton from Robert Earl Keen's band, so all sorts. Matt Giles. There's going to be a really, really wonderful group, and we're doing some good there too. And I know how much everybody misses the Purgatory Players, so bringing them back for that one show virtually online Sunday. And the Gospel Turkey is actually going to be there too, which is a rare sighting. All right, everybody, enough of my yapping. And so right now we're going to go to our friend, and this is Mobley. Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you this morning? Oh, actually, it's not morning for you guys. I always forget.
Yeah, afternoon. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Afternoon's pretty good. Afternoon's pretty good. Well, we've already got like a whole lot of really, really great questions, and I know that you didn't know much about this when I asked you to do it, so I really, really appreciate it. We get questions all the questions come from the people who are watching online and sending me stuff to like my newsletter or something online. And I'm just going to jump right in because I like a lot of these questions and I want to quit yapping. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
It's always good to get me to stop yapping. Let's see. I'm going to start right with my friend Kate Howard, who you might know, who's the Austin Word woman and really, really good with a pun. She has a couple of really great questions. Bye, sweetie. See you. She has a couple of really great questions. First one is, the poetry of Hound of the World is gorgeous, heartbreaking, and inspiring. That's a great thing to say. What was the genesis of that song?
So Hound the World, I was on tour, and
Is it How in the World? Did I write it down wrong?
so it's Hound the World.
Right. That's okay. So I did get it right. Right.
But I also say How in the World in the song.
Gotcha.
So I kind of play with that. But I was on tour probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I was practicing doing polyrhythms on the seat. And the first line is, I beat a braided rhythm on the seat. And I was just thinking about being out on the road, as I was thinking about everything that was going on in the world, and yeah, that's where the genesis of the song was. It doesn't sound like a song that came from somebody sitting in a car drumming on the seat, but that's where it came from.
What was kind of going on in the world as far as you could see at that moment? What was sort of like, the microcosm of, or the macrocosm of what you were looking at? What was really kind of, or is it, don't feel also, sometimes we get these questions and people say, you know what, I want to leave a little bit to the mystery.
Yeah.
As far as songs are concerned. And I want people to be able to put themselves into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very much somebody who thinks that the meaning, I don't have the authoritative like answer as to what a particular song is about, but in terms of what I was thinking about, I was I was kind of just it was one of those times in life where it's a lot of work to keep being a person, and at those times, I I kind of marvel at the fact that we all do it, and like,
Somehow it keeps going.
yeah, somehow things keep going. Like, even mundane stuff, like it is such a trial for me to keep my car registration and inspection up to date. And I just think, like, how on earth do millions
Yeah.
of people do this? Like, as individual, there's nobody who takes care of it for you. We just all do it, and that's a mundane thing. That's nothing on the scale of the kinds of crises that people deal with all the time. So part of the song is just kind of marveling at our capacity to endure and persevere under what are often pretty adverse circumstances.
Conditions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I find too that as musicians and artists of any kind, we have this wonderful outlet where we can kind of, I don't want to call it escapism. I want to call it something more like, I don't know, the view from above, or where we're able to just kind of like get out of our own head and stuff. And it's a double-edged sword because we forget. Like, I remember, practicing in my bedroom and my mom knocking on the door and being like, it sounds like someone's dying in there. And like 5 hours would go by and I wouldn't eat. And she would be like, I know you know how to play something pretty. She was very encouraging. But that sort of loss of time sometimes falls into, then we look at the things that just like, kind of keep life going as like so hard to keep track of. We lost him. So we go back to my room. Let's hope he's going to call right back. He's back. You got kicked off.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to just in advance tell everybody, right now there's a huge storm on Vancouver Island. I'm talking huge. We had thunder and lightning and snow at the same time last night. It was crazy. And our dogs from Texas played in the snow for the first time. So every week something happens. These apps are constantly updating without telling us. Every time I come back, there's something new on it. So thank you for calling right back in when something happens. I'm just going to blame it on me. You got a full signal and I can see it. You got like 4 full green bars, so yeah. It's not gonna be you. Anyway, I was blabbing again. I think that's just that we I feel you as far as that's concerned. Now, for those who don't know necessarily, some people who regularly watch the show are like, okay, well, what's he talking about? I don't know if you like the term looper. I find, or even like one man band, or how you like to explain it. But I want people to kind of get an idea. I would highly recommend. Here, let me do this. Checking out the website and finding some of Mobley's music, because a live show with you, I mean, you pull up with like a small truckload of stuff. You got a small truckload of gear. And to say that it's just like, you're not just sitting there with oh man, there he goes again. He's going to call right back. Who knows what's going on with this app today? We'll just keep doing it. Yeah. We're going to have to go with it. We're going to have to go with it. So you pull up with a small truckload, and I really mean that, of drums, keys, guitar, and you're harmonying with yourself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of it is, Do you kind of have what do you prefer when somebody says it? You just say, "Man, I just play by myself," or
Yeah, I mean, I think all of the I think all of the kind of standard terms can, as you're alluding to, can kind of obscure as much as they illuminate.
right? They could kind of put it in a box as opposed to
Yeah,
making it like, "Wow, this is what he really does."
yeah. I mean, I think the most succinct way that I've ever put it is just say I'm a band.
See,
um,
now I really like that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. So yeah, I on stage, like you said, I play drums, keys, bass, guitar, triggering samples, looping, all that sort of stuff, and also lights and video. So it's definitely a big production.
And I also want to say too that there's nothing missed in the show of it, and that it is you are able to kind of move a crowd and you're able to kind of bring people in, but there's definitely an element of more than we get in trouble sometimes in Austin because we have beautiful audiences that will come and check us out trying out new tunes. And we go to some other town and people are like, what am I paying to see this for? And it's like it's Austinitis. My friend Yogi calls it Austinitis. And they forget that a really well put together show is something to be kind of honored and a very cool thing. That's something that I take from one of your shows is the overall. But now that we know that, and now that we've talked a little bit about coming up with just like a drum pattern on a seat, like on a drum stool or something like that, people right now in the comments, like my friend Joanna is like, Mobley's new record is really good. So if we're talking about what you do when you record records, is it always different? Do you tend to play the parts? Do you tend to hire musicians? I have seen some stuff where I've seen you playing with other musicians, like recently with a band. I want to say maybe half a month ago or something like that. I was following around. I saw you playing something. What's your
So
experience with that, and when do you do it? And
yeah, so I had a band. I mean, Mobley was a band up until 2016, I guess.
mhm.
And I we were a quartet and then a trio and then a duo, where it was me and a drummer. And then I had a tour of a few months booked, and my drummer was injured, and about 2 weeks before the tour was supposed to start. And so I had to choose between doing the tour acoustic or coming up with something I could do by myself. And so that was kind of the genesis of what I'm doing now. I ordered this cocktail drum kit and started coming up with everything that I'm doing.
For
Um,
those who don't know, a cocktail drum kit is sort of a bit of a smaller one. It's not really a kid's drum kit. It has and it has like it's not a standing one, is it?
no,
With
mine's
the
a sitting
stand up?
one. But it's
Okay.
it's like the reason I got it is it's like the nesting dolls. So like
Yeah.
all of my drums can fit inside the other drums, and I can put them in one case and carry them with one hand.
Form and
So,
function.
all right, exactly. Um, so I did that, and then I have once or twice since that time done like a couple one-off things with the band. But in terms of recording, actually, even back to the band days, it was always just me
Mm.
alone in the studio, pretty much. I'm actually sitting in what is, according to the floor plan of my house, the living room, but it's actually my studio. This is where I make my records. So yeah, I play everything on the records and record them, produce them, all that.
Well, I'm going to give people just a full shot because you got some cool stuff in the background. Just everybody just like,
Yes, this is my studio.
exactly. We won't do it with my room because we're in the one bedroom, underneath our grandma Hazel, who's 93 from Scotland. And I got two choices. I can either do the show by the bookcase or in the kitchen.
Nice.
But we came up right before the pandemic, and we're lucky to be here and all that other jazz. All right, so
Yeah.
back to it. That kind of jumps into a question from Lee Doctari, my friend Lee. We call him Doctari. It's a long story. And he said, what inspired your move from live instruments to looping? And it really sounds like you kind of answered that question. And again, and let's not call it looping. Let's call it to him being the band. No, go ahead.
Yeah. It's a dichotomy that I personally am not interested in, I guess. And,
Yeah.
you know, like the thing I'm interested in is the art, and you know, the methods are what they are, and they impact
They're
the art.
secondary.
Yeah. But in terms of the way that I kind of craft my live show, you know, in another life, I could easily have been a magician. And so I very much am, I don't, I, a lot of times in the show, there may be one or two moments in the show where I highlight the fact that I'm looping. The rest of the time I try to hide it because I don't want it to become the show. I don't want it to become a distraction. And I'm more interested in setting up the space. Like for me, the purpose of the live show, aside from, you know, the kind of human communal aspect, is I'm going to kind of take over this space. I'm going to turn off all the lights and just turn on my lights so that only the things I want you to see are lit up. And I'm going to put a video up behind me that kind of conditions you emotionally. It's all about creating, you know, a psychological, like psychologically preparing you to receive the message of the song. And so everything else is in service of that. So whatever form this year, next year, 5 years from now feels like the most appropriate form for the message I'm trying to convey, that's the form that the show will take.
Yeah, I can relate on a much smaller level, and I'll tell you how. I went to I had an opening for a much larger artist than myself, who's a friend. They said, "Hey, why don't you come open some shows in Denver?" So I flew to Denver, and I had this guitar player who was going to show up and play with me, and he's like, "Oh yeah, man, I'm happy to." So I wasn't going to pay him, which is ridiculous, but we've been friends for 20 years. And he was like, "Oh, no, man, just show up." And I wasn't making any money either. And he was like, yeah, don't worry about it. So I said, well, I'll throw you a bone if I make anything. So we do a radio show. Long story short, afterwards I said, hey, I'll buy you a nice lunch before the show. So I said, where you want to go? He's like, man, right next to the radio station is a great Italian place. Okay. So I take him there. We eat some Italian. And his name's Michael O'Connor. And then after the show, he gets food poisoning. Really, not after the show, after the meal. Like super bad. Super bad. Like I'm back at his house. He's like, I'm not coming out. I'm not coming to the show. He's never missed it. Like, he's one of us, man. He's going to not miss a show. We go, we do the show. Yeah. So he says, man, I don't know what to tell you. And I was like, all right, well, I had a big plan for the setup and the sound check and all this stuff. So I go to a Guitar Center, which is basically, you know, Home Depot for musicians. Yeah. You know, it's where you go and you get staples. It's not where you go to get the thing you're going to fall in love with, your favorite guitar. You go get whatever. Yeah. And long story short, I bought a looper, and I was like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to click it on a verse, and like it's going to record me playing a verse, and that way I'm going to be able to take some solos on my slide and stuff like that. And I just brought it to the show, and like I named it Michael. And then like during the show, I was like, and it was just like necessity. And it was like, okay. And then after that, it became a thing where I want it, if I'm going to use it at all in a show, I want it to be as transparent as possible, because I don't want people talking about it. And because invariably, I don't know about you, every show that someone notices I have one, they'll be like, have you heard so-and-so? They're really good at looping. And you're like, come on, man. You know, and it's like, they're just trying to like, you know, It's nothing on them. Anyway, long story short, hey, Yogi, I was just talking about you, man. Yogi's on there. Anyway, I definitely understand. You want the art to be the most important thing. You want the message of the song to be the most important thing. It's just the vehicle that you choose to use.
Yeah, and that's no knock on anybody who that's like, that's the spectacle. But for me, I want the spectacle to reside elsewhere, you know?
Yeah, makes sense. Well, in that, my friend Sasha, who you may or may not know from American Dreamer, he wanted to know, like, did you have earlier influences on Looper who you saw or who used the technology to do a one-man band thing, or to use backtracks that you created or anything like that? You know, he mentioned Jacob Collier, but he was like, nah, that's more of somebody who is probably after or around the same time of you, who does cool stuff. But we also have friends like Sidney Wright and Jackie Vincent who also use them pretty inventively and stuff like that. Do you have any cats that who kind of, and who I would say are also a band, you know?
You know, I didn't. So I've been using looping, triggering sequences, like running MIDI sequences, tracks, whatever, for 12 years.
Yeah,
So
so you've been at it.
so like when I first started doing it, it was definitely not a thing that was generally okay with people.
No, they
You
thought
know?
it was like, what's going on, right?
Right, right. It has been kind of, like we had a band, but there were three of us for most of the time, but our sonic ambitions were just wider than that. So we would loop stuff
Mm.
or trigger sequences or whatever. And at the end of the day, for me, it's like, well, like I played it, I wrote it, like it's my music. Like, what do you want me to what do you want me to tell you?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so like we definitely endured a lot of ridicule and misunderstanding early on, like
just makes you stronger.
in the oh yeah. And I never cared because like the
Yeah,
people who got it. And then, here we are 10 years later, and like the biggest live artists in the world are DJs, and nobody cares about
yeah,
any of this
yeah.
stuff. And so it's been interesting and actually kind of vindicating to watch. But to the question of influence, no, I mean there was really no blueprint for the thing that I was envisioning in my head. And consequently it has involved a lot of scrapes and stumbles along the way.
Sure.
I've had a lot of just like, not a lot, but enough to haunt me in my nightmares.
Live show ones.
Yeah, live shows where it's just like the technology failed me,
Yeah,
or like the setting just wasn't quite right for what I was trying to do. And but the flip side of that is now I definitely feel equipped, both technically and from a like from a showmanship standpoint, to pull the show off literally anywhere now. I've done it all over the
well,
world, and
yeah.
it's like hand in glove now.
I think that a lot of stuff that's mystifying a little bit to audiences is they'll say, "Oh, you make it look easy, or you make it this, or you make it that," and they don't realize necessarily, and how would they, our ability to recover and not have it be shown is paramount to a good show. And when you learn how to do that with whatever you're doing, then you've kind of gotten to a place. Because I made a joke in my show when I was taking out that looper after my buddy got sick, that when you mess up on a looper, it might as well sound like an analog, tape machine falling off the back of the truck in the middle of recording with the speakers on high.
Yeah.
It's a bad sound when the loop doesn't come back in, and you really have to have an impeccable time to set loops up and really do them live, or you have really got to man, you got to work it out. You really got to work it out.
Yeah, and in my case, because I never know where I'm going to be on the stage when something goes wrong.
It's always a new show too, right?
Yeah, a big part of that is like, because I want to hide it. And this is something that you wouldn't know unless you knew. But like my tour manager, sound engineer, like can tell when it's happening. But like
Yeah.
I've got MIDI triggers set up literally all over the stage, so that if something goes wrong, I can either cancel the loop and start redoing it or whatever.
Yes.
But like, yeah, it's a really complex operation to do it, as one person and with everything that's going on, and hide it. Like hide
Yeah,
it.
and how many times have you heard? There's an old great line from P Funk: "When in doubt, vamp." And like,
Yeah.
and like the thing is, it's like, yeah, because if I can just vamp for like 4 more bars and recut that,
Yeah.
then the loop's going to go on and it's going to be cool, as opposed to like, well, maybe I could just see if it's going to loop. It's like, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
Bad idea. There's our friend Sydney. We were just talking about you too. I will get to your question in a minute. And my friend Ted Lundgren has a really great question. I like this question a lot. Just popped on the screen. Excuse me if this has been asked already. It has not. Do you think you write with the looping in mind, or do you just make it work later? And I think you kind of answered that a little bit about how the music is paramount and what you want to create. You use the technology, but if you could talk a little bit about that, like how much is it in your mind when you're writing these songs that you know you're going to perform live?
Yeah. So because I guess I'll take a step back to kind of illustrate the scale of what I'm talking about. Because the show is such a production, and so when I add a song, I have to come up with a new video for the song. I have to program the lights. I have to figure out what I'm playing and program all of my sequences and my triggers and all that. It takes
video. You mean video for the back screen? Excuse me. You mean video for the back screen? I'm letting people kind of go on.
So it takes about 75 hours to add a new song to the set plus rehearsal. So that's without actually practicing it. So as a result, a lot of like videos and lights and colors and all that stuff are kind of playing in my head as I'm writing. But the one aspect that I don't bother to think about, because I do think it would be limiting, is how am I going to pull this off as a performer? I don't.
You let that go.
Like when I had the band, especially, I would be writing, I'd be like, okay, so he'll play this and they'll play that, and then I guess at the bridge, what we'll do is, and it's just too limiting. And so now I write the song and then I figure out how I can do it live, or I don't. If I feel like I can't put it across live, then it's just a song that doesn't get played live.
Yeah. See, now I also really dig that for the people out there who are the creative types who are interested in somebody doing this. First of all, you're saying 75 hours for a song before you rehearse it. That is an honest, rough guesstimate of, why it stands out as a great performance that you feel comfortable on stage. Like you can feel comfortable if something goes wrong. You've got other things ready. This isn't like show up. Doesn't mean that you can't improvise in the moment. Doesn't mean that you can't vamp this and that. It kind of means that you can more,
right? Because
you've spent that time,
right? And
people often think, man, that things just kind of happen, and they don't. They don't just happen, right? Inspiration is a wonderful thing, and spark is a beautiful thing, and however you feel like it comes to you is a beautiful thing. But perspiration too, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Now that you've mentioned this, I'm gonna go ahead and pull up just because I really, really, really want to play it, and then I'll get to Sydney. I'm gonna write down your question while I do this, Sydney. Couple of things. Hey, everybody! I mentioned earlier we're on Austin Music TV, and I want to mention that today all of our tips are going to dawaheals.org. You can either directly. Sorry, those are my dogs. I think there's a. Oh yeah. You can either go directly to the website, make a donation there, or you can send the money like you usually do. When we split the tips, we're going to put all our tips towards that today. It's a really, really cool organization. I've been looking into it since we started talking about it, and it's righteous and beautiful and a good thing to do. So, but right now, I'm going to go ahead and play the James Crow video, which is awesome, and we're going to talk a little bit about it because we've got some questions specifically about it.
Cool.
Let me see if I can do this. Sorry, everybody. I'm still learning how to use all these things. This newfangled technology. There it is. James Crow coming up. All right, folks. We'll see you in just a minute. Enjoy.
I've been seeing the world through a dead man's eyes. And when I laid me down, I did not rise. But then I noticed that I've been watching myself smell from a car outside. And so to bring me round, it took me down a long dark ride. That's where I find it at. James Grohl, come and tell me what you know. James Grohl, you're a devil in a daydream. James Grohl, when you're walking for me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. James Grohl, come and tell me what you know. James Grohl, you're a devil in a daydream. James Grohl, will you break it to me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. You've been selling the world on a dead man's life, the kind that won't decay or fade away or pass in time. I play the scientific, I can't be tamed. You pray to a religion that can't be named, but all I really want is to crawl back in my body and be free. James Grohl, come and tell me what you know. James Grohl, you're a devil in a daydream. James Grohl, when you're walking for me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. James Grohl, come and tell me what you know. James Grohl, you're a devil in a daydream. James Grohl, will you bring it to me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. Is there a fever worse than faith when you know what you lost, 'cause it's gone from the beginning? And I can feel it in the way that you are when you're on. James Grohl, come and tell me what you know. James Grohl, you're a devil in a daydream. James Grohl, can you walk it for me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. James Grohl, come and tell me what you know. James Grohl, you're a devil in a daydream. James Grohl, will you bring it to me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. James Grohl, come and tell me what you know. James Grohl, you're a devil in a daydream. James Grohl, when you're walking for me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. James Grohl, come and tell me what you know. James Grohl, you're a devil in a daydream. James Grohl, will you bring it to me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now.
Yeah. I love that face at the end. Yours.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really cool. Hey, I smushed that down and compressed it a little bit, everybody, so that we could use it on the Restream app. So I think the quality, when I was looking at it on my Restream app, the quality may have been a little bit choppy. So I apologize for that. And I know if you go here, then that's a good possibility for finding out all things Mobley. Okay, I'm afraid we have a couple of technical questions, but they are cool questions.
Okay.
Sydney Wright, who we were talking about earlier, I know you probably know Sydney.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
really super talented and kind of has her own thing that she involves looping with a lot. And she's curious, if you're doing stuff with the band, what do you use to interface the tech with human players? Is it like, and I assume I'm going to elaborate a little on her question. Is it like bringing some of the stuff, or is it like, no, I'm going to do this all live now? Or how do you do it when do you just make a conscious decision to do it the other way?
So I haven't really played with a band
Too much
since building this show, except
Right.
for one show where it was just completely off the rails band show. And but I will say I did create it all with that in mind, and so as a consequence, it's all completely modular. So if I wanted a bass player to play with me or a drummer or whatever, it's just a matter of me tweaking a couple settings. In the other, I guess another piece of information is I have a background in film, and I also used to be a programmer for a living.
Makes sense.
So
Yeah.
so it's just tweaking a few settings in some software that I've written that helps run the show, and then plugging in humans.
Yeah, I don't mean to explain something to people that they already know, but by saying that it's modular, you know, what we're saying is like we can just pull one thing out and put a human being in its place, right? Is that kind
Right.
of the way
Yeah,
that term means for
absolutely.
you? Yeah. And well, I think that answers the question. It's not really as much about adding or using specific stuff. It's like if I use a human being, it's going to be taking stuff away. And she says, "Do you send the band a click?"
So I am set up that when I had a drummer, we would send it to the drummer. For myself, I don't really use a click.
Hmm.
I'll have sometime depending on what the song calls for. I may have it briefly at the beginning, or it may come in.
Like a count
Um,
off.
yeah, like if I'm gonna do like an acapella thing and I want it to end exactly at a certain point, I'll have
Because you
it
got
come.
lights and all these other things
Yeah,
connected to it.
yeah,
You're going to have to, you
right.
know.
I'll have that come back on, but for the most part, I'm just listening to the groove of like what I've played, or a MIDI sequence or whatever. And because I've found that the way that I feel music, and I think this is true for a lot of people, even if I'm in, like, let's say 4/4 time,
Yeah.
the way that I feel the song might not be this. It might not be 1, 2, 3. The way I feel the song might be and and and
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
it may be something that's not even as regular as that. So I like to kind of get my feel and my groove off of whatever that element is for me in the song. So I
Yeah.
use, as an answer, I have no problem with the click at all, but I use it as little as I practically can in the show.
Yeah. Is it something that you could send to the band? For those who don't know, we're talking about a click track, which is generally the sound of something like a cowbell or a click, literally a click that keeps people in time when you have set stuff. Sometimes it's used in the studio. Sometimes it's even used live for big, big, big performances. I mean, I really got to understand, with some uh, opening up for people at stadiums and stuff like that, when a click was really useful to a show, and it was like, yeah, I get it, you know. Um, but do you send that click to them if they ask for it, or is it just like, now you guys got to feel this?
So I actually just remembered another performance that's really germane to this. I did a performance with Panoramic Voices for their holiday show.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was me, like a drummer who was kind of on the center stage with me, and then an orchestra and a like 50-person choir or something like that. And so obviously time is a serious consideration there. So
Yes.
I am set up. I guess to get further into to the technical weeds, because my setup is so particular,
Yep.
I travel with my own mixer, a human
Mm.
being who mixes my shows, but also a physical mixer that is part of the rack of gear, like with my guitar stuff, my voice, all that stuff, so that I can control the routing, and also so that like this keyboard behind me
Yep.
is a custom keyboard rig that I built, and from there I can mix my in-ear monitors and all that. So I say all that to say another part of the modularity is that I can just, reroute some things in the mixer and send stuff out. So for that show, I was sending the click to the conductor who was conducting the orchestra, and to the drummer who was on stage with me, so that they were locked in with what I was grooving off of, but I didn't have the click in my ear. So yeah, I think Sydney asked that question.
Yeah. Yeah. She did.
For me, it's all about designing, really trying to, and comes from my background as a programmer, but really trying to future proof everything you do. You want to be thinking, what are all the possible situations that I can reasonably prepare for today to prevent myself from having to do a ton of work if some big opportunity comes up where it's like, hey, can you play this show? Can you come on this tour next week? It's like, oh, well,
Mm.
no, I'd need 3 weeks to tweak my show. And it's like, no, I'll just change a few settings and I'll be there. ready to go.
Well, if you do co-writing at all, I want to write the song "Future Proof" with you, because that's very germane to what I'm using your words now too. Um, I don't know if you ever read any Yuval Noah Harari. He's the guy who wrote *Sapiens* and *Homo Deus* and all that stuff. We'll talk about that after the show. Brady Woodall. Brady Woodall says, as a drummer, this conversation is so encouraging. Now, I cannot tell through text if that is sarcasm or not, but I'll tell you what's really interesting, Brady, is that, he's talking about doing a show and doing his stuff, and you were just talking about with Panoramic playing with a drummer.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And,
and being able to, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I think an interesting thing about the experience of having this show for me has been that. So I'm doing this show. I constantly get feedback like, "Oh, I've never seen anything like this. It was really inspiring to see that this is possible, because I'd never considered that you could even do a show like this." So I very much am a believer in the kind of the singularity and peculiarity of any particular way of approaching things. There are things that I am doing with my show that I simply could not do if there were other musicians up there. And there are things that I'll never be able to accomplish unless I'm up there with other musicians. So there's room for all of it. And I think it all has value and appeal. I would never advocate for every single show in the world to be like mine. That would be a deeply impoverished world. And I would also never advocate for, or I guess never abide, people, shutting down the possibility of doing shows like mine. I mean, one huge consideration is like me starting to do this solo band thing was the difference between me being able to do music full time and not, because the cost of hiring the band and per diems and hotel rooms and all that stuff on tour, that was the difference between me needing to have another job and being able to do this full time and write and play music professionally. And I don't think anybody who seriously cares about musicians and the way that music gets made would begrudge anybody kind of responding to the economic realities of the world.
Yeah. Now let me ask you about that, because I'm curious about your take. From where I sit, I've been a front person and a side person, and I've been a person who can go out where it's like, oh, well, since he's the side guy, I can go out with somebody like Joe Ely or Ruthie Foster, and it's just me and her.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, they're not always going to necessarily just call the drummer, Brady. And I'm sorry if I singled you out, buddy. I thought it brought us to a cool place. Now, necessity being the mother of invention, and us having to make these considerations, I see also as a little bit of a double-edged sword, because it is making us, come up with creative ideas. But are they necessarily ideas that we would have done if those economic challenges hadn't come our way? Like, I'm curious to your answer to this. I know what my answer to this is for certain things. If the economic problems weren't necessarily there, and we were paying musicians, in my humble opinion, what they deserved, and there was better love for venues and better love for this kind of thing, would you be doing the one-man band thing? Now that you've tasted both, and what's your take on it? Because I know what mine is, but
yeah. So I can say honestly that even financial hardship notwithstanding, like I struggled through it for years and years and years, and found a way to pay the people we needed to pay and do all that.
You still got a team that you're paying.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. But that said, like, it wasn't the finances that impelled me to do it. It was just a fluke. My drummer got hurt. Right. He needed to stay at his job so he could keep his insurance. Completely got that. And so I ended up doing what I did. And then, like, after doing it for a while, I was like, oh, I don't have to keep doing this other thing. But what I would say is, you know, because I've absolutely considered this. If money were no object, my show would be something like, have you ever seen Stop Making Sense, the Talking
Oh,
Heads?
of course,
Yeah,
million times. It's one of the
yeah.
best shows I've ever seen.
So
Yeah.
it starts obviously with David Byrne just out there with the boombox, you know, by himself, and then the band gets bigger and
Psycho
bigger.
Killer. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be something like that where, you know, some songs I'm on stage on my own, other songs I'm on stage with 50 people, because that's if money were no object, you know, I write orchestral music, I write
Yeah.
like big band music, I write stuff that you would need dozens of humans to play, and I would absolutely love to employ dozens of humans to play it.
Right.
Um, and so, yeah, you know, if money were no object, I think most of us would lean toward that. But I will say, as I said before, there are aesthetic and creative things that I can put across on stage by myself that simply are not possible as soon as you get even one other person up there with me. So
Yeah.
I would want to do both.
David Byrne is a great example of somebody who writes and is really, really good at a solo performance, is really, really good with a backing track, is really, really good with a band. Another person that I was just talking to my wife about is Lizzo. And the thing about Lizzo that I really, really love is that she can rock a band, and the band is intimately in with her. And the players can play, and she's with it. And she can have a backing track and be with a bunch of dancers and kill it. And you can't really argue with both being artistically viable and both being what somebody might be coming to the show for. Your solo show might be, you know, that. And also, and again, Brady, my friend, I definitely didn't mean to single you out. I just thought it kind of brought us to a cool place because we struggle. I don't know about you, but I struggle sometimes with, hey, how can I send some work to my band's way or to the people who worked for me pre-pandemic? You know, none of them were making a living playing with me necessarily. I'd never graduated to that level, but I did feel some responsibility because I had been in their side person place, you know, and whether it's management or it's even somebody who does merch on the side to make a few bucks or whatever. Those considerations are there. We got a bunch of good comments, you know, and Brady says, all good. I got a few good gigs and one pays well. Glad you guys are making a living. You're both badass. Thank you, Brady. Sydney Wright says, exactly. Being able to go solo is the only way I've been able to keep playing through the pandemic. I don't know if you meant to say pandemic, but that's a nice positive thing to call it. And Chris Card says, exactly. The economics change. I went from being a drummer to a solo acoustic performer, finding myself producing, self-producing. Yeah. I think that I had an interesting thing last week too, or 2 weeks ago, with Guy Forsyth and his wife Jessica, and she said, you know, I'm kind of have a hard time when people say we're resilient. She's like, we shouldn't have to be resilient. I was like, I don't know. From my perspective, I think it's a compliment. As look, musicians are tough. We're gonna figure out how to do it. It's like there's a great song, and this will be the last thing before I ask another question, is by Gillian Welch. It's called Everything is Free. And in the song, she says, they figured it out. We're going to do it anyway, even if it doesn't pay. And unfortunately, the music business knows that about us. Yeah. They're there to make money, and they know we're going to do this because it's what we do. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's always the way it's been. Back to cool questions. My friend Jana had a cool question that I like. Unfortunately, it's tech again. She says, what DAW, which is a digital audio workstation, which is like a recording program, Pro Tools, Logic, Digital Performer, et cetera, what do you all prefer for composition, creative, getting ideas down? I will say, Jana, real quick, for me, I use everything. I'll use a voice memo. I'll use a napkin. If I hear something, I'm going to write it down fast. Otherwise, it's gone. And I love that story that Kate Howard told me about Tom Waits. Tom Waits is on the road, and he's driving, and he gets this idea for a song, and he's like looking around, and he can't do anything, and he's on the LA freeway, and he just looks up to the sky, and he goes, "Can't you see I'm driving?" You know, like you get a good laugh out of that. Yeah. But I learned how to use Pro Tools so I could do good recording from home, and a lot of people ask about that. I love the simplicity of Logic, and I love if I'm writing with somebody online and we're co-writing, to have my Logic open so I can just be like, here, let me put down a beat and we can sing to it together or whatever. I find that to be super, super useful. Love me some, Jana says, I must buy some napkins. But do you have a preferred digital workstation for recording and for creative, or do you have a few ideas of how you get song ideas down?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm absolutely with you. Like whatever's at hand is what I use. But that said, I have like like I said, gotten rid of my living room and replaced it with a studio so that there's always a mic plugged in.
So
I've always
ready.
got my, you know, like frankly, I've stopped making demos. Like I'm always working on the record because I've had so many times where it's
That's really cool. I've never heard that. Like,
musicians
I'm
will
done
know.
with demos.
Right, yeah. Demoitis is a thing we've all experienced where you that spark hits you the first time you record an idea. There's something magical about the way that you recorded it. And then when you're making the record, it's like, how do I get back to that
You
thing?
chase it. We used to call it
Yeah.
chasing the demo. Yeah.
Right. And so now I don't do demos. I'm as soon as I start writing the song, I'm making the record. And that's because, this mic that I'm talking into right now is always plugged in, and my guitars are always right next to the interface, so that that can be the case. But to answer the specific question, aside from voice memos, napkins, whatever's at hand when the idea comes, I think that for me, I find Logic to be really inspiring. I started on GarageBand,
Yeah.
which is also great. Like,
User friendly.
yeah,
It's an
whatever.
incredible place to start.
Yeah, whatever you have. There are records that have sold millions of copies that were made in GarageBand.
Totally. From
And
Beck,
so, like,
you
yeah,
know.
don't people shouldn't feel any squeamishness or whatever, or inferiority about using whatever. But for me, it's Logic in the studio and Ableton on stage.
I have a friend who is a really, really great bass player in a band, and he recently said, okay, well, I'm going to do it. Now that we're in the pandemic, I'm going to start doing home recording. And he said, well, what do you use for this? And what do you use for that? He's like, somebody sent me a free version. I said, okay, use that.
Yeah.
And he was like, what? And I was like, because, man, really, they all talk to each other. If we send each other wave files, doesn't matter. I was like, if you got something free and you got a friend who can show you how to use it, start.
Yeah.
And give it a shot, and you're going to find out which one you like better. And I like different ones for different things, and what else was I going to say? I lost it. But I think that as far as digital audio workstations, especially Jana, I've heard a lot of the things that you've been doing on Logic, and you're killing it. Like, she just put something up on her Patreon page, and someone made the comment that it sounded like a U2 guitar line with a trap beat. And I was like, well, that's cool. that caught my ear, All right. And
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, definitely. That's a beautiful thing. And thank you for that question, Jana. Okay, we're going to start we're really, really close to the end. Okay, so everybody who's on television right now, Austin Music TV, this is what we're doing right now. My guest is Mobley. This is 20 Question Tuesdays. I'm Jeff Plankenhorn. I do this every week. Next week is Sarah Hickman. Also, you can go back and watch all the archives, which we're probably going to move over to my Patreon page, and we're only going to keep stuff up for about 2 weeks, maybe 2 to 4 weeks. We'll keep stuff up because my YouTube is just getting, full. But next month got a whole bunch of great people. Scott Strickland, Gary Nicholson, the writer from Nashville, all sorts of great people. Austin Music TV, thanks for doing this and giving me a place to showcase musicians and get them talking about what they're doing and get some good questions out. My question, I only ask one question every week to my guests. Also, I'll probably jump in and interrupt you as soon as we have to go off in about 3 or 4 minutes. I only ask one question every week, and that is, I want to know what your guilty pleasure music is. And I mean the thing that people might not know that you listen to, or might not expect that you listen to, or even that you're like, yeah, I don't know if I tell everybody I listen to that on a regular basis, you know, because
Yeah.
what happened is on one of my first shows, we were talking about how Songs in the Key of Life was like what started me with wanting to play music, and that I was a little kid and I was sitting in front of the speaker and just listening to everything, and it was right around that age where I was just learning what music was. But at the same time, my mother played tons and tons of Barry Manilow. I couldn't help it. It's just like it. I have a soft spot when I hear those songs. I'm just kind of like, I know it's entertainment, you know, but I have a soft spot.
Yeah.
I'm a Fanilow. Do you have anything that is like for real? And so people always tell me what their guilty pleasure music. I mean, John D. Graham told me his was ABBA. I was like, for real? And he's like, man, I love ABBA. You know, I love the high harmonies and stuff. I said, all right. Do you have something that's kind of pops into mind?
You know, I'm really boring in this regard because I'm not ashamed of any of it. Like I don't
That's
feel
what Bill Curtin said too.
I don't feel weird about it at all. I understand it. I
Yeah.
understand. Like I'm socially aware enough to know, okay, these are bands that don't have the same prestige or whatever. Or they're not
Or
taken
hip.
seriously.
Not
Um,
yeah. Well,
but
then that's what I had to ask Bill Curtin, and what he did was he just said something that people wouldn't expect that
yeah.
you listen to. Something kind of off the wall that we may not have heard of, that we can go, you know, like a lot of times people will put this in the comments so that they could be like, yeah, you know, here's
Yeah,
something that Mobley
I don't.
listens to that I've never heard of before.
So I was really the thing that got me into music as a thing that you perform. I was really into like punk and ska,
Mm.
and so
Which wave ska?
I guess it would be
Like
the
first wave ska, or like
n-
English ska, or like
no,
West Coast ska?
yeah, West Coast ska.
Oh, so like pre Fishbone and
Yeah. But my entree to that was, and my favorite bands were just bands who were around where I was living, so, who aren't around anymore. Like it's impossible to find their music,
oh, okay.
because a lot of that scene was just so underground, and so I guess that would be the unexpected answer. But yeah, my entree to live music and live performing was like house shows and garage shows of like really super DIY underground punk and ska bands.
That's really cool. And was that primarily around Austin, or where was that?
No, so that was in so my father was in the military, and so I've lived all
You
over the
moved.
place. So that was primarily in San Antonio and then in North Carolina.
Gotcha. All right, everybody, we got about 25 seconds before we're off on Austin Music TV. We're going to stay online just for a couple more minutes. Thank you so very much, Austin Music TV, and thank you, Mobley. We really appreciate you coming in and talking to us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And we're going to be off the air in 5, 4, 3. I've never really done a countdown here. 1. Thanks, TV. All right. Now we are officially just online.
Cool.
And this has been a super fun show. Let me make sure that we have not missed any questions. Okay, we got the looper stuff. We got the live instrument stuff. We got the poetry of the Hound of the World. Ooh, Kate also asked about the video. The video for Nobody's Favorite. She wanted to know where did you shoot the video for Nobody's Favorite, and whose idea was the concept behind it? Was that another thing that was like all your idea conceptually, or what?
Yeah, so we shot it at the Texas Federation of Women's Clubs Mansion, which is just
Is that
off the
over
drag.
off the drag?
Yeah.
I know where that is. I shot a movie there with a movie scene there with Bob Schneider. There was a big party in there that we shot for some movie. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's
Banquet room?
mostly, yes.
Yeah.
It's a really creepy but telegenic space. And as far as the concept, yes, I wrote it and directed it. It is part of a people more eagle-eyed people who've seen both videos will notice that there are recurring characters between it, and so those are part 1 and 2 of a 4-part film that is going to be coming out around the record, and the record and film are both called Young and Dying and the Occident Supreme.
Yep, which is shown right at the beginning of the video, which now that we are offline, we can say, go to, we're going to go right here and say, this is where you go to find out about that stuff. And I mean, I don't know about you, but most of the time we use our website as the hub that goes everywhere to all of the different things. And I know that at the bottom of the page of your website, you go all the way down. It's like boom, 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 boom. Here's all the links. It makes it really, really easy if you want to check the YouTube, the Instagram, the this and that, the this and that. And it helps. Just checking out the last of it. So the concept there. Yeah, that's pretty much it for now. Kate Howard. I'm re-recording the vocals for my album using Audacity. Oh, I was going to ask one more question, just the very last one, before we mention Dawa Heals again. I find a lot of people are kind of pushing me towards single promotion and putting out singles primarily because of streaming, but I am a big fan of the album format. But I mean, people made 45s, people put out singles forever. It's always been a thing. Do you find it's another thing that you're kind of moving into where, you know, 4 songs, 4-part movie, or 4-part thing puts into become a movie? Again, necessity being mother of invention, or man, that's just the way I wanted to do it.
I would say it's a mix. I totally get the kind of market exigencies that are driving people toward focusing on singles. My feeling is that I am still very interested in songs that really can't be singles. I still write songs that just don't, you know, I think the beauty of the album, and like all of these are just, you know, constructions that are a response to the media that are available. You know, a single's 3.5 minutes because that's what you could fit on on a 7-inch. But I think a great thing about albums is it lets us as artists expose people to songs that might not have drawn them into us at first. So like the single can be the song that, oh, what is this? And then track 6 or whatever can be, I don't know that I would have ever listened to a song like this on my own initiative. But I'm a big believer in the idea that a part of the job of the artist is to show people things that they like that they wouldn't have known that they liked. And
I love that explanation.
And so I hope we can find a way to hold on to that, because that idea isn't really compatible with only singles and only trying to fit into a playlist and all that. I think there has to be a more kind of capacious definition of what it is we do, because I'm not being an old fogey about it really at all. I'm very much comfortable with adapting and all that, but there will be something lost if we make it so that the only thing that's viable for a musician to do is be the most instantly appealing version of themselves all the time. You know,
not to mention the fact that it goes in and out so fast. Your favorite song becomes like a weekly thing, and it's so fast that people go, and those of us who are a little older like myself, you know, a lot of times I'll hear my contemporaries saying, oh, the attention span, and I'm like, nah, it's more like the way things are delivered. You know, it's not that they're not going to be hip to it. It's what is the model that makes more money, you know. And it's
I think about this all the time. You know, I'm old enough that I was around before downloads were basically the way that you got music. So when I was a fairly young child, but conscious, like the way that I got music was CDs, and we didn't have enough money that I was getting a lot of CDs. I would maybe get one CD a month, like
Yeah.
if things were going well. And
So you went into the deep cuts.
right, well, like I would at the end of the month, I would know for sure whether I liked it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I wasn't going to skip, and I'm not praising this as a format because it was also incidentally hugely exploitative to a lot of people. But
Exactly.
what I will say that is a quirk of that format that I think that we should try to find a way to get back to is I just had to sit with stuff. Like it's like, well, I bought this. I wasn't sure whether I'd like it. I hoped that I would, and I thought that I might. And I'm really going to take the time to figure out whether I do because that was a lot of money for me. Like $15. I didn't
Heck
just
yeah,
have
man.
$15 laying around.
You had to
And
work for it.
right. And so I would love to, like, again, without being like good old days or any of that, because I don't believe in that. But
Nah, me
but
neither.
I would
There were no
love
good old
to
days.
see, right. I would love to find a way to orient people to our art. You know, you don't run through an art gallery. Like, you know
Right.
what I mean? Like you
Yeah,
walk
to
through
see
it.
who gets there the fastest. So you just
Right.
like, "Hey, I'm only going to look at one thing and boogie."
Right,
You know?
right. I would love to find a medium that allowed us to orient people to our art in that way. It was like, just sit with this. Like some ideas are so complex that you need time with them.
Mhm.
Some sounds are so foreign to you at first that you need time with them. And
Yeah.
so I'd love to figure out a way to engender that kind of relationship with sound
Me
again.
too. Me too. I will say this too. I'm encouraged often by the fact that you, in this day and age, you can have a fan base that is, I've got fans in Amsterdam, I've got fans in England, I've got fans in, but you know, my name on a billboard, no one would know who
Right.
I was. But
Right.
I make a living making music that I like.
Right.
And it's like a double-edged sword that there's so many people making music, but I can create a fan base all over the world that somehow sustains me, and I'm not asking for much. And those people are hanging on everything, and then they're not necessarily care if I write a funk tune right after I write a folk tune,
Right.
you know, and
Right.
they're kind of turned on by that, you know.
Totally. I really think that all of this artifice, you know, around genre and format and all that is super antiquated and not really,
Yes.
it doesn't really speak to who people are at this point. You know, people have all kinds of music in their libraries at this stage and will, like you said, jump from hip hop song to a funk song, to a folk song, to a rock song, you know, to spoken word, to blah, blah, blah. And if an artist is interested in producing all that, you know, it's really a shame that as far as the formal mainstream industry is concerned, there's really no template for that.
Yeah, they don't have a bin to put it in. They don't have a bin that says this goes in world music, this goes in reggae.
Right.
You know, if we go through our vinyl, my wife's kind of like, well, what does this go in? And I'm like, it could be both. You know, this could be pop. This could be world, you know.
Right. And the lines move. Like the lines
move, constantly move. Yeah. And that's okay too. I try to have a little bit of sympathy for the people who are trying to promote our stuff.
Oh,
you
absolutely.
know, because they got to figure out a way to get it to people.
Yeah.
And bless them for doing it, as long as we make okay.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway, man, this conversation has been fantastic. I hope we can do it again. You stay online with me if you don't mind. I'm going to say thank you to everybody, and I'm going to also mention everybody. I've seen some tips have already been coming in. I know that's why my email is blowing up, and thank you. And what we are doing today is we are taking all these tips and we are sending them to dawaheals.org. Please go look at the website and know what you are donating to. There's a really, really, really good understanding of what they're doing in the About section right there on the website. And you can directly just go right to Dawa Heals and tip there instead today, or you can send it to me and I will send it in our name for this show and for Mobley. Sound cool?
Yeah. Awesome.
Hey, man, thank you for a really, really, really great show. And is there anything else that you have going on? You know, the one thing I didn't mention today is how you were kind of doing pop-up shows in people's driveways. and how hip that was and just how beautiful it was. And man, I could just see when I was following you on the socials and stuff, sort of the joy that people were getting out of that. And look, I didn't talk about this at all today, but man, Texas is getting hit hard. And we have got to take it seriously. You have got to start saving lives wearing a mask. You've got to start washing your hands. You got to social distance. You got to. I'm not a pushy person, but that's the thing. But people who have creative ideas that are safe like that, oh man, it was just so beautiful. Are you doing any plans to do anything more like that? Probably not this moment.
Yeah, it's, so we were
tough right now.
We were very scrupulous. We sent detailed instructions about safety and all that on everyone, because I take it deadly seriously. We've done a couple more that we haven't really publicized, and I'm hoping, I'm as hopeful and optimistic, but I think it's going to be a while before we are back at full, touring capacity. So
sure,
I hope that, as on the tail of this, as things are coming down, we'll get back out there and be doing some curbside shows for sure. But yeah, right now, just trying to lay low and encourage everybody else to do the same to the degree that's possible.
Go and check out, because I can say that now that we're off air, please go and check out. You can see little snippets of what Mobley was doing if you scroll down a little bit on the Instagram and see some of the things that you posted as far as that. They what's the old joke? It warmed my cold black heart, Thanks to everybody online. Thanks to Mobley. I'm going to go offline right now. And thank you, everybody, for giving us some tips that we can give to Dawa Heals. Mobley, thanks very much, man.
Thank you. And thank you.